Hello, and welcome to the AAArdvark Accessibility Podcast. This is Natalie Garza. I'm one of the co-hosts, and with me today is...
Natalie MacLees, the other co-host.
And she is a digital accessibility expert here to answer our questions. And this episode's very cinematic topic is called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Emojis and accessibility. So we're going to go over some WCAG success criterion that goes over emojis and why they can sometimes be good, bad, and ugly. So, what is the first WCAG success criteria that we're going to talk about today that emphasizes the good in emojis?
Yeah, so I think we could talk about 3.1.5 for reading level, which is a AAA success criteria, but it's one of the ones that I think is good to try to implement whenever you can. So there are a few things in AAA that I think even if you're going for AA level compliance, they're so helpful that I think it's a good idea to try to implement it on any site where you possibly can. And reading level is one of them. And to meet that criteria, you would just make sure that you don't have any content on your site that's over about an 8th grade reading level. So if you're not in the United States, that would be about a middle school reading level, or like where you are in your early teens. So around ages 12 or 13. So around that reading level is what you want to go for to make sure that the most number of people are going to be able to read and engage with your content. And where emojis can come into that is that they can help with comprehension. They can help with understanding some more complex information by presenting it in an alternative way, by highlighting certain things or kind of communicating, hey, this is something you have to really pay attention to. This is a really important point, right? Little emojis being sprinkled in there can communicate that kind of information and help with understanding.
Yeah, the one caveat with 315 though is that they still have to be accessible, the emojis.
They do have to be accessible. And I think one of the challenges with emojis, well, we'll get into that, I guess, when we go into the bad.
Yeah, but in summary, emojis can be good. They can help break up content. They can help express content at a glance, right? But let's go into the bad side of emojis. Starting with 111, non-text content, level A.
Yeah, emojis are in this kind of weird spot where they're technically a font, but they're not actually text content. So they're non-text content, and they do get alternate text by default, but it behaves in kind of a weird way. So when you come across an emoji with a screen reader, the screen reader does not announce this is an emoji. It doesn't give the screen reader user any kind of notification that this is an emoji. It just reads the meaning of the emoji as though those words were typed out in the sentence. So I have a good example because my car has a feature that while I'm driving, it will read text messages to me. So it's essentially a screen reader. And one time I was meeting my friend at the park and she texted me and she said, "There's a puppy training class, tears of joy." Because she put the little tears of joy, which is the little laughing emoji with tears coming out of his eyes. She had put that in there. So it was very funny. But again, like it just gets read like that. It doesn't say emoji, tears of joy. It just says whatever the meaning of the emoji was, which makes it kind of weird. And especially if there's several of them in a row, it's hard to tell, was that an emoji or did they type that text? What's happening here? It could be a really kind of odd experience.
Yeah, it can get pretty confusing real fast.
Yeah.
Or a lot of times people like to do emoji lists.
You mean for bullets?
Yeah, and like replacing bullet points.
Yeah. And that's confusing for the same reason. Like if you use a regular bullet point list, a screen reader user will hear, oh, there's a list with 5 items. Here's the first item, second item, third item. and let them know that there is a list there. If you just use emojis, they don't get that context. And then they also are just hearing the emoji being read out at the beginning of each point. And it's like I said, it's not always clear that it's an emoji or if it was text that was typed because it sounds the same either way. And then the other big challenge is emojis aren't always literal, right? They can have meaning other than what the emoji is. And sometimes that can get completely lost when you're just listening to what the name of the emoji is. That kind of
Mhm.
social or cultural meaning that we've layered onto several different types of emojis gets completely lost.
Yeah, and their names are not very helpful. Like Smiling Imp, like he's a little sneaky, he's a little mischievous, but Smiling Imp does not convey that at all.
No.
So, all in all, emojis can be bad, but they can still be made accessible. And there's a few different ways to do that.
Yeah, if you're thoughtful about how you use them, they can definitely still be helpful. I would be careful about using too many. So that would be the first thing is don't use several of them in a row. don't don't do a message that's just emojis instead of text. Don't do that. You can give them ARIA labels or alt text basically if you really think somebody's going to be confused about why that's there or what it's doing. You can do that. It is an option. Or you could include something in the text next to it that explains what it is. Like why is that there? To let people know, like, hey, that was an emoji, by the way. I didn't type out full moon face. I just used that emoji. Here's what I meant by it. So to help people understand a little bit, because they can be helpful for people who like having the extra visual input, right? For very visual learners, they can be very helpful. And this is a constant tension that we see in accessibility, where sometimes something that works really well for one group actually creates a barrier for another group. And so there's this constant kind of push and pull over like who are we accommodating and how, and what can we do to help one group that doesn't harm another. And a lot of it is going to come down to knowing about who your audience is for your particular use case, and then being really thoughtful that even when you do something that's going to accommodate one group, that it's not causing harm or barriers for another group.
Yeah, because again, they can be good, but they can also be bad. I think I will also tack on avoid starting sentences or starting text with emojis because then it's really disorienting going like full moon face. Today's moon forecast is.
Yeah. Yeah, if you use them at all, and I think social media is the place where people tend to get really carried away with them, like put one at the end of your message and call it a day. Like that's it. Don't put multiple emojis and don't put them at the beginning. And also that weird thing that people do with the hands clapping emoji between every word. Stop and think for a second about what that sounds like to a screen reader user. So someone's going to hear like, don't clapping hands, use clapping hands, two clapping hands, many clapping hands, emojis clapping. You're not emphasizing your message. In that case, you're making it really hard to understand what it is.
No, if anything, that just makes me a little dizzy to hear. Is like, don't clapping hands, use clapping. Oh my goodness. So yeah, emojis good and bad, but now let's go even further. How can they be ugly?
Yeah, well, we're throwing it back to the early days of the web here, and the ugly is the emoticons and ASCII art that maybe if you're old like me, you remember when these were really popular and used all over the web. But Natalie tells me that this is having a resurgence with Gen Z.
Yes, I see this becoming a resurgence. The Frutiger Arrow aesthetic is in full swing right now. People are trying to bring back vintage little things, and I think ASCII art is one of them. And the early days of texting, which I do remember, We used a lot of emoticons.
Yeah. So I think, Natalie, you'll have to put an example on the screen just to make sure everybody understands what we mean when we say emoticons in ASCII art. But yeah. ASCII art is basically just a way to type characters to make a picture. So, you can type parentheses and pipe characters, usually not letters. It's usually different kinds of punctuation that you would type to make kitty faces and cows and all kinds of different shapes over multiple lines of text usually. But of course, like you can imagine, like a screen reader isn't going to see that and read cow, right? It's going to read forward angle bracket, back angle bracket, pipe character, underscore. It's not going to make any sense at all. So if you're going to make the choice to use those things, you do want to be really thoughtful about it and provide a nice way for people to access that content. And I think probably the most recommended approach is to take a screenshot and then add alt text to it. So rather than have that be live text on your page, it would just be an image, because realistically, that is an image, right? Functionally, that's performing as a graphical element on your page or in your post or whatever you happen to be doing. So if you can, take a screenshot and add alt text. If you can't do that, then what you could do is put a description before your ASCII art. So if you have this beautiful ASCII art of a butterfly that goes on for 100 lines, before that starts, you could put a little description like, oh, here's ASCII art of a butterfly, and some description of what it is for the people who can't see it. And then a skip link that's going to let people skip past it if they're using a screen reader or if they're navigating with their keyboard, so that they don't have to listen to that or interact with it in any way. So that would be another approach that you could use.
In my head, when you said take a screenshot, I almost thought about like an artist paints on his canvas and then makes prints of it and then sells the prints. The text editor is your canvas, and then you take a print of it and publish it and share it with everybody.
Yeah. I think also one place that ASCII art gets used a lot is in comments in code, where it'll get used to add like what looks like basically a big header in code. So be thoughtful about that. If probably someday somebody with some kind of disability is going to have to interact with your code, and if they don't understand what that, if instead of hearing a word read out, they hear a bunch of characters, a bunch of random parenthesis and pipe characters read out, it's not going to be very helpful. So be thoughtful about that when you're putting that into your code as well.
Yeah, that is a good point, because trim and borders also technically count as ASCII art. So instead of putting like M dash M dash M dash M dash to make a separator between content, you can just put the HTML element for line separator. What is that one called?
Oh, a BR tag?
A BR tag.
Yeah.
So to wrap up, that was the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to emojis and accessibility. So where can people go to see if their site's accessible?
They can come on over to aardvarkaccessibility.com. You can test your homepage for free, find out what the accessibility issues are, and learn how to fix them.
Yes, so go check out aardvarkaccessibility.com. And with that, we're going to wrap up. This is episode 31 of the Aardvark Accessibility Podcast. Thank you guys for watching. We'll talk to y'all next time. And now for you LinkedIn and YouTube viewers that stick around. This is a segment where we grab our video thumbnail. I chose face with spiral eyes emoji. So we're going to take turns. Natalie, you can go first.
I don't even... Oh, thanks. I can't make my mouth do this. And I can't make my eyes do spirals.
Okay, now here's my rendition.
I don't know what's happening with your eyebrows, but he doesn't have eyebrows.
All right, so with that, we're going to cut.